As the cars might say, let's go. Hey, everybody, Mark Davis in for Dennis Prager today on this Tuesday, the 16th of November, 2021. Gee, what shall we talk about? 1-8-Prager-776, 1-8-Prager-776. Dennis out today, back tomorrow. Glad to be here with you. For those unfamiliar, I get to hang out with you guys a lot. It's one of the continuing joys of my professional life that I host the morning show here on 660 AM, The Answer in Dallas, Fort Worth. And then on the occasional day that the bat signal goes out over DFW, I get to come upstairs to the big house and sit here in the big TV studio room for the Salem News Channel. Be sure to watch all the proceedings at the Salem News Channel app or at salemnewschannel.com. Dennis Prager Show and all the shows, and I will at some point wind up on all those other shows, and it's a joy to be with you. So Mark Davis, follow me on Twitter at Mark Davis, and feel free to shoot me stuff. It's like another entire show that takes place over there, but the real one taking place here is on the phone with you at 1-8-Prager-776. Do I have questions for you? I don't know if Kyle Rittenhouse verdict vigil is all we'll do today. I tend to think that if we're just sort of sitting here drumming our fingers on the table waiting for this jury to do something, and it's probably the dumbest thing in the world to predict anything in terms of how long the deliberation will be. So let me just share with you what people I know with a lot of experience at these things have told me. And it's pretty self-evident. If the jury comes back really quickly, then something was open and shut. Something was really, speaking of self-evident, then it seems like it was to them. And I can presume that the only thing that would be really open and shut would be an acquittal. So if they're back in a couple of hours, if they're back during today's Dennis Prager Show, that would seem to smack of acquittal. Now, why? This is the point at which I begin to try to do something that we should all try to do. And that is to analyze things based on the facts and the evidence and not on preconceived notions we might have. Our race, our politics, our life experience, our biases, our likes, our dislikes. So from the beginning of this entire process, I have consumed all this evidence. And when it all started out, I said, okay, I know what this kid's motivation was, what he says his motivation was. It was to go down there and be of some help on the flaming streets of Kenosha. And we can talk all day about whether it was smart for him to go, whether he was a completely reliable, truth-telling citizen once he was there. Are you or are you not an EMT? We can talk about that stuff all day long. And boy, Mr. Binger sure wanted to dwell on that during his summation. If you strip away from that prosecution summation, if you strip away the irrelevancies, the non sequiturs, the character attacks, it would have been about 5 minutes long, because that's all they got, and I'm being generous. This is one of the most inept, ill-conceived prosecutions I've seen in a long time, and I've been doing radio for a long time. I've been covering trials for a long time. So the people with actual legal experience, they've been telling me that if the jury comes back really quickly, that smacks of acquittal, and really quickly is like a couple of 2, 3, 4 hours. Actually, today would probably be a fairly brief verdict window, because they didn't get started until like 10 o'clock Central Time. Because, did you catch this? It's like a contest on a 1950s game show. They had this big barrel, and they put 18 juror numbers in it. 18, because there were 18 jurors. And then they just roll it like we're drawing for a new washer and dryer at the World's Fair in 1966. Boom, 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 boom. And then they go, and then they reach in and they pull out and 6 of the jurors get sent home. Now, usually you have 12 jurors and 6 alternate jurors, and the alternate jurors kind of know that they're playing AAA ball. They have yet to really be called up to the show, right? That if somebody goes down, the phone rings, you get called in from the bullpen, or whatever analogy you want to use. But for this one, all 18 are there. All 18 are there, and they're consuming all the facts of the case, and then they literally brum, 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 roll this big drum, reach in, pull out the number, number 9. See ya, thanks. Or I don't know if they drew it, positively or negatively. Do the numbers drawn get to go, or do the numbers drawn get sent home? Either way, 6 of these people who have devoted their time, attention, one presumes some level of emotional investment, not in terms of letting their feelings supersede the facts and the evidence, but just the emotional investment as a citizen. You plug into this, you start to care. You care about doing a good job, or you should. You care about being vigilant, or you should. You care about getting it right, or you should. Imagine going through that and then all of a sudden learning, thanks, bye. I can envision one of two things. Either the jurors sent home going, yes, thank you, God, because I guess they're not going to be targeted by activists if the jury dares to return an acquittal, which is not the approved verdict of the street. George Floyd's ghost demands otherwise. And by that I mean in the post-Floyd issue situation where a guy obviously should not have died at the hands of the Minneapolis police, but now we've got team names being changed. No more Washington Redskins, no more Cleveland Indians, juries. And this is not like this has only been the case since the Floyd case, but juries feeling probably never more intense pressure than now to return a verdict that doesn't result in their town catching on fire, to return a verdict that doesn't result in them being targeted or doxxed or worse for being on the jury. And we've had cameras in the courtroom. It's not like the cameras have been trained on the jury, thank God, but there have been people in there, drilling down on them with their own eyeballs. So may God be with this jury to have the clarity to see the facts and the evidence and the courage to find in accordance with those things. And speaking of God, if I may, I do this on the local show. I do it when I hang out here on whatever national show I happen to be doing. So as we head into some heavy lifting of some hot topics, both with regard to this trial and maybe various other things, the continuing disaster of Biden. Here in my state of Texas, Beto O'Rourke is running for governor. He's not going to win, but it's going to be closer than it otherwise would be. I'll give you a little dispatch from here in the Lone Star State. There's all kinds of things we can do. And as is the case whenever I'm here, give me a shout. We're open for business. Glad to bring up anything that you're passionate about, within some degree of reason. I have some gatekeeping function. 1-8-Prager-776, 1-8-Prager-776. Lord, as we gather, guide us and protect us as we face the challenges of this new day. We thank you every day for this blessed nation and for your hand in creating it. Fill our hearts with the energy to protect the freedoms which come from you, which our nation was founded to protect. Lord, be with us as we chart a course out of this COVID nightmare. Help us to be smart and safe as we reclaim our lives. Guide us to fight for our liberties within the law and by following your law. Let us navigate these troubling times with a positive spirit, treating others as we would wish to be treated. Lord, these are times of trial and challenge. So lift us as we follow your word and work for a better America, where our Constitution is honored, our elections are reliable, our borders work, our justice system focuses on facts and evidence, where we fight for the unborn, and where our differences are hashed out with honesty and goodwill. And our freedoms of speech and worship are protected. As we face each day's problems, and it's a lot, please give us the clarity to look around and cherish our many, many blessings in our nation, our whatever state we happen to live in, our communities, and our families. If we follow you, Lord, we know we can get through anything. And we ask these things in your holy name. Amen. All right. 1-8-Prager-776. The questions I have for you are as follows, and then we'll just carry through that. Lord knows I got 47 other things to say, but we got phone lines, and they are there for you. Glad you are here. 1-8-Prager-776. What do you think the jury will do? Do you see it as I do, as an obvious case of self-defense, if the verdict is acquittal, as the facts and evidence dictate? Will the streets of Kenosha erupt in rioting, or will cooler heads prevail? And what does this whole thing say about this moment in time for our justice system and just for the community that is America? Got a bunch more to say, and you do too. Grab a line, 1-8-Prager-776. Mark Davis in for Dennis, and we'll continue.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Creeps who've had some financial success in life. We're the bad. We need to be punished. Although not Pelosi. Did you hear she pushed back on the capital gains tax increase? She didn't like that. And she's a wealthy woman. But anyway, it turns out the Nonpartisan Tax Policy Center has taken a look at Build Back Better. They're saying about 30% of middle-income households will be taxed and pay additional taxes, have a tax increase in 2022. Whoops! No, say it isn't so, Joe. Say it isn't so. Come on.
Come on, man.
Did you lie to us again? Did you not tell the truth? And some low and middle class and middle income households, according to the Nonpartisan Tax Policy Center, which has reviewed Build Back Better, they will pay more per year in taxes if the plan is implemented. You know, obviously they sat around the White House, they said, let's try this. Let's say that this massive spending won't cost anything. You know, it'll be a little bit like Biden calling Satchel Paige a Negro, and then we'll say he didn't call Satchel Paige a Negro. We'll see if they buy it. It doesn't cost a thing. It's free. Just like free college is really free. Wink, wink. Bunch of liars.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. Sometimes there are policies so destructive that at first you don't believe they're true. Joe Biden is currently defending one, his plan to award $450,000 to migrants separated from their families after entering the U.S. illegally. Children of deceased U.S. soldiers are separated from their parents permanently. They don't receive this kind of money. And migrants who enter the U.S. legally certainly don't get this kind of payout. The really big jackpot, it seems, is being reserved for the lawbreakers. There are some obvious truths here. First, behavior that's subsidized gets repeated. Joe Biden is effectively inviting many more illegal immigrants to breach America's open borders. Second, he's betting over time the payoffs will benefit his party in political terms. Meanwhile, the vast majority of Americans watch in shock and dismay as our president, the country's chief law enforcement officer, brazenly rewards lawbreaking, a clear violation of his oath to defend our nation's laws. It's a sorry sight indeed.
The Pilgrims. They were poor. They were outcasts. They were enemies of the state for their refusal to submit to the Church of England.
The Mayflower was a cargo ship, but the most precious cargo that was carried across the Atlantic were the ideas in the hearts of the Pilgrims that were drawn from the Bible.
Not only did they start self-rule, they started free trade, capitalism, land ownership, all in 10 years with 51 people.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Little Jackson Brown for you on the Dennis Prager program for this Tuesday, the 16th of November. Mark Davis filling in for Dennis. Phone number is 1-8-Prager-776, 1-8-Prager-776. Let me give you my brief thumbnail sketch answers to the questions I've posed to you, and then go straight to your calls for your answers or things that you'd like to add to the fray here as we wait with bated breath for a Rittenhouse verdict. The jury received the case just, within the last hour and a fraction. So this is probably going to take some time. Oh, the converse of what attorneys have been telling me, that a quick return of the jury means acquittal, does not necessarily mean that an extended deliberation, well into today, even extending into tomorrow, maybe even beyond that, does not necessarily mean conviction. It can take, there's a way with a case that is fraught with as many details and peripheral issues as this one is, where it could take a while to get to conviction. It could take a while to get to acquittal. A quick open and shut, that would seem to fit only the acquittal model, unless there's some alternate universe where these jurors live, where they took a look at one of the most flawed and politically motivated prosecutions I've ever seen and go guilty. And I have no idea what would drive them if that winds up being the case. I've had a lot of people ask me that if I am so convinced of the argument for acquittal, why am I not sufficiently confident that a jury made up of people who have eyes just like I do, why am I not confident, supremely confident, that they will find that way? I'm not doubtful, I'm not dubious, but it's America in 2021, and those are human beings, and those are human beings who, this is why I prayed for clarity and for courage. How sad is it that it requires courage to rule correctly, to decide correctly in this jury room? How pathetic is it that every single one of these jurors knows that there will be a target on their backs, figuratively, if not literally, that their livelihoods, their homes, their families could be jeopardized by today's brand of poisonous, violent activism if they fail to return the required verdict. So I don't know. I pray that they do. And then immediately pivot to prayer for peace in Kenosha and elsewhere. All right, listen, I could prattle on, but let's let you guys into the process. 1-8-Prager-776. We are in Los Angeles. Charlie, hi. Mark Davis in for Dennis. Welcome. Happy Tuesday.
Hi, Mark, and amen to your blessing first.
Thank you.
And there have been several points during the course of the trial where the prosecution's keen political motivation has been revealed. I think one of the most interesting, and one of my friends said the prosecutor is an imbecile, and I think that's incorrect. I think the answer is the prosecutor is a true believer, and that came up when he said if he possessed a gun, he has no right to claim self-defense.
Yeah.
Now, this kind of a statement should put concern in the hearts of every law enforcement officer in the country, since they frequently have to rely on self-defense for a justified shooting.
Of course they do. Or imagine somebody in the aftermath of Katrina, when countless people in New Orleans had to defend their homes and their properties with weaponry against the onslaught of God knows who's coming down the road. These were people who absolutely armed up and who completely were entitled to self-defense, even though they were in fact armed. You brought up a fascinating point of debate that comes out a lot. When someone says something that is just so grotesquely false, is it because they're stupid, or do they totally know better and they're just trying to deceive you? I can't read minds. I don't know. But I think you're right in identifying a politically motivated prosecution. And on the subject of firearms, Mr. Binger's firearms illiteracy was in evidence by his handling of the weapon. But when he said that when he cast aspersions, when he mocked anybody who uses an AR-15 to defend himself, when he mocked the motivation of anybody who would wander into it. Listen, we can talk about whether it's smart or whether we would do it, our kids would do it, but anybody who would even think of taking to those streets and protecting their town, that drew mockery from Mr. Binger. Only liberalism feeds that kind of logic.
And there's an extension of that, and that is, since the law of the state of Wisconsin does not say if you have a firearm, you have an outright self-defense, that means that any police shooting, a justified shoot, doesn't exist. Well, that's not the law of the state of Wisconsin. That's the law of the BLM. And I believe he wants to see that case adjudicated according to the law of the BLM, not the state of Wisconsin.
Well put, sir. Well put. Thanks very much. We are in Mojave Valley, Arizona. Robert, hey, Mark Davison for Dennis. Welcome. How are you doing?
Oh, pretty good today. Hey, I got a different kind of question. It is regarding Mr. Binger and his handling of that rifle in the courtroom. The 4 basic firearm safety rules. He violated every single one of them.
Yep.
Finger on the trigger, waving across the track. My question is, where's the bailiff during this? Bailiffs are responsible for safety of that courthouse. Why did the judge object to him handling that weapon in that manner? Someone should have objected to him.
I think it's a fair question, but a really high bar. Unlike the set of an Alec Baldwin movie, they presumed accurately that the gun was empty. A lot of Alec Baldwin dark jokes were made so you do have a good point, but the notion of the judge or a bailiff going, hey, counselor, put the I think they presumed.
To them, but don't
I know. I totally get it. At a gun range, you bet that cry would go out. In this particular courtroom, it did not. But your point is well taken. This is appropriate. Let's go to Kenosha. Nick, hey, Mark Davison for Dennis. How are you?
Hey, how are you?
Good.
So I'm literally in the city. I'm less than a mile from the courthouse.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely hitting me for sure.
I bet.
But I have several friends that my question is, why was it okay for every BLM person, but not for that unfortunate
Thank you. Kyle Rittenhouse goes to Kenosha with no criminal record and no criminal intent. Everybody he shot had a criminal record and criminal intent. And as for the community of Kenosha, thinking of you, praying for you, sir, and everybody that lives there with you. We want peace there. And I'll tell you, 500 plus National Guard. Thank God. Thank God. I don't care what the optics are of that. You know what the optics are of that? Zero tolerance for rioting. That's what the optics are for that. And I'd rather have that heavy law enforcement presence and not need it than need it and not have it. 1-8-Prager-776, Mark Davison for Dennis. So glad you're here. More of your calls are next. Stick around.
Trending now on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
And that's why religious people are far more patriotic, frankly, about the Constitution, because they don't believe those rights were given to them by the state, but rather by something larger. And in Europe, I don't think that people believe that. They used to turn to monarchies, and then they turned to fascism and communism, at least in the last 100 or more years, and it doesn't seem to work. And now they're just turning towards the European Union and bureaucrats to sort of guide them as their new priests.
One of the reasons I am always curious about why Europe went this way, but why America admires it, how come we got this disease when it's clearly not working? And I think the answer is in what I call the semester abroad disease. It's like mad cow disease. If you spend a semester abroad when you're 21, you have a wonderful time. You eat well, you have a party for 6 months, and then you come home and you extrapolate from that everything must be like being a student in Europe for 6 months when there's nothing at all to do with an American having fun in Europe for 6 months. David, this all started to rise in the United States when we started to ship our college students away for a semester in Florence. And then they come back and they think, wow, Europe is great.
That as well. I had thought about that, but also just tourism, right? I mean, when we go to Europe, it's beautiful. When people go to Hungary, they sit by the river, the Danube, and sip coffee. But in the real world, about a mile out of the city, things aren't that way. The American home, I think, on average, I might be wrong about this, but it's close. It's about 1,000 square feet bigger than the average European home. We live in mansions in our suburbs that most Europeans would not be able to comprehend.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
I've just heard so much about this, and nobody seems to be taking it seriously.
This is the exact reason that in normal science, this is not normal science by any stretch of the imagination, we do benefit risk analysis. And obviously that is different for each person. But here we're not doing that. We're just saying everybody needs to do this. And we're completely neglecting natural immunity, which is extremely important. We've recognized it for decades and decades before now. Now they won't even want to talk about it or acknowledge it at all.
What do you reckon is behind that? I mean, this is a big thing. What can be behind something like that?
Well, I can't think of any scientific valid reason for doing it. There could be political reasons or other things going on, but I can't think of any scientific reason why you would ignore the evidence and the facts and just push a one-size-fits-all ideology.
We also know that many people have objections to these vaccines because all three of them, in one way or the other, involved aborted children. There's no getting around that. And so if somebody has an objection to that, how is it that the government can wipe away religious liberty and say, you've got to get this, if you want to keep your job, you've got to get this?
For the government to mandate away your religious liberty is a real issue. And even the federal court has recognized that and put a stay on the mandate.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
It is the Dennis Prager Show. Mark Davis filling in, and yes, visible and audible as the Salem News Channel permits. SalemNewsChannel.com or the very cool brand spanking new Salem News Channel app. Our company has just crazy things in mind for this, and they're all for your enjoyment and your delight. And so, heaven knows we got a lot to plow through today, this week, this month, this year, and every year. And we're just glad to be partnered with you as we work our way through the various issues, large and small, that fill the day's news. 1-8-PRAGER-776, 1-8-PRAGER-776. Couple of quick things as I get ready to go back to your calls. I mentioned how grateful I am that the governor of Wisconsin, a Democrat, saw fit to activate roughly 500 National Guard troops to send a message of zero tolerance for rioting. So I saw a couple of reporters doing stand-ups in front of the courthouse, and they'd wave the cameras around a little bit, and there'd be like the occasional armored vehicle. But where are those 500 troops exactly? Well, the actual Fox affiliate in Milwaukee, Fox 6, has a reporter named Jason Calvi, C-A-L-V-I. He's an interesting Twitter follow. And he has just shared a little nugget. The Wisconsin National Guard, he says, won't say where they're staging the 500 troops, but we found them 60 miles away from Kenosha, which means it would take about an hour and a half for police for them to get there if the police call them. Okay. I mean, 500 Guard troops are great, but they kind of need to be there. Maybe they're expecting a somewhat longer deliberation. That's fine. I think it's a really good idea for them to be there. Oh, I don't know, right now, so that anybody thinking of making trouble, if the acquittal, anything other than the desired tarring and feathering of Kyle Rittenhouse happens, it's a good idea for them to be there right now. Now, speaking of messaging, let's go to the White House, where Jen Psaki, who, very glad to say, has come out of her dance with the COVID bug. She's looking hale and hearty. And Peter Doocy of Fox asked her about a reference Joe Biden made like a year ago, grouping Kyle Rittenhouse himself in with the whole notion of white supremacy. And Peter asked, what was that about?
Watch. Why did President Biden suggest that Kyle Rittenhouse on trial in Kenosha is a white supremacist?
What I'm not going to speak to right now is anything about an ongoing trial, nor the president's past comments. What I can reiterate for you is the president's view that we shouldn't have, broadly speaking, vigilantes patrolling our communities with assault weapons.
What? What? And so, well, I'm not going to comment on this case, but let's not have people doing exactly what he is charged with doing. The good news, once again, none of this is racial. None of this is truly racial. You may think, oh, race war, it's all a racial conflict. Oh, race. Almost none of these current tensions of the modern day are racial. Do you think conservative blacks will riot if Kyle Rittenhouse is acquitted? Bet not. But there'll be some liberal whites throwing a brick or two if that winds up happening, and I pray that it does not. This is all political, all of this stuff. Critical race theory. Conservative blacks don't like critical race theory either. So this notion that, and by the way, why is this good news? Because for us to have political differences makes sense. We are going to see things differently as political creatures. Our conservatism, our liberalism, our libertarianism, our Marxism, wherever we happen to be on the big spectrum, are going to inform our views. Our skin color is truly irrelevant. Our sex is truly irrelevant. As I've always said, I don't care about the pigment or the plumbing. What matters is the eyes that lead to the brain, and what you see and what you hear, and how you feel about things, and the ideology and the agenda that you bring to the marketplace. That's true of our elected leaders. It's true of you and me. So it's good it's a better, healthier thing to judge people by what they say, how they feel, what they believe, than on, dumb factors like skin color that just don't matter. All right, your thoughts matter to us here on the Dennis Prager Show. Mark Davis filling in from DFW. So do grab a line, and we'll continue with more of your thoughts in just a moment. The Rittenhouse jury is still out. The vigil continues. These and other issues under our magnifying glass. Stay here.
Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Judge Thomas, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
I was under constant attack
you're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border.
Human trafficking.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
I grew up poor, which is even worse than being poor.
We would have sandwiches with no meat.
My American dream entailed working hard and making $20,000 a year. But I surpassed that goal and became a corporate CEO.
We'll all be able to say, free at last, free at last.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Man, I miss my father, and I want him to be here with me, but he's not.
We all had something in common. A lot of us were miserable. We had no fathers in our lives.
This is how I began the life of crime. I desired to have a father who would tell me that what I did was wrong.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
.660 a.m. The Answer, Dallas, Fort Worth, where I do my own happy little morning show. And then, boy, I can't think of, as I always say, there's no better show prep for doing the Dennis Prager show than completing my own show 3 hours in the prior part of the morning. And man, we were all over the place about the Rittenhouse verdict to come, about the jury deliberations, about where this is all headed, about what it says about our justice system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So glad to take that, cut and paste it right into today's national conversation, wherever you are. 1-8-PRAGER-776 is the place to bring your views. Agree, disagree, always glad to have you. 1-8-PRAGER-776. And listen, speaking of folks I'm glad to talk about, have you noticed home prices are skyrocketing? Price of everything is skyrocketing. But for current homeowners, it means your home has more equity. And so with today's high cost of living, your monthly debts are higher. Your ability to save money could be tougher than ever before. That's why I want you to contact Andrew and Todd at Sierra Pacific Mortgage now to review your cash out refinance options. Do you have credit card debt, home improvement projects, just need a little more scratch, need some more savings? This may be your last chance to take advantage of today's low interest rates. Andrew and Todd can help you get a cash out while rates are at historic lows. Go to Andrew and Todd, 2 Ds, andrewandtodd.com. Fill out their simple form for a quick mortgage checkup or call them at 888-1172, 888-1172. Andrew and Todd at Sierra Pacific Mortgage. They can help you get back to financial security. Go to Andrew and Todd, 2 Ds, andrewandtodd.com, or call 888-1172. 1172. All right, you can call us and be a part of the festivities at 1-8-Prager-776. Let's head to, I'm loving the calls from the actual Badger State. We're in Racine. Hey, David, Mark Davis in for Dennis. Welcome. How are you? And happy Tuesday.
Well, greetings, Mark. Happy Tuesday. And how I am, I'm feeling old. 55 years ago yesterday, Project Gemini ended with the splashdown of Gemini 12.
Jim Lovell and Buzz Aldrin. Look at you. Thanks very much.
Yes. I know. I take up a lot of space.
There you go. Pum. He's here all week. Go ahead.
Okay. The point I was going to bring up, you were thinking that it was kind of odd that they were 65 miles away from the National Guard from Kenosha. They're in Madison right now, yes. But the thing is...
Well, careful, Madison or Waukesha, because I think the guy said they were...
I heard Madison, but like I say, it might be Waukesha.
The reporter guy said Waukesha. My question is, why aren't they... there are two places right now, Kenosha and not Kenosha. Why in the world are they not right there in Kenosha sending the message to all potential rioters of not just no, but hell no? I don't need them out of town. I need them in town.
They're waiting until the verdict comes in.
That's stupid. That is stupid. Why in the world are they? How many buildings can burn? How many people can get ravaged in the hour and a half it'll take to rumble those big trucks into Kenosha? They need to be there yesterday.
The thing is, when the verdict, there's going to be about an hour and a half delay between the time the verdict is announced and I mean that a verdict has been reached. I should have said.
Don't care. I mean, technically true. Yeah, that is how things go. It tends to move. It tends to move. Sit tight. It tends to move at a fairly glacial pace, I know, but they need to be there right now. They need to be there now as an advance show of force, as an anticipatory bit of imagery, as a bit of optics designed to spread across the land. Because this isn't just Kenosha. This isn't just Wisconsin. There are people who will gladly, there are people who get on a plane to go riot if they feel like the window is open and if they are so inclined. So every single one of these 500 troops needs to be standing there in full gear right now in anticipation of this verdict, if it comes in the next 5 minutes or if it takes 5 days. 1-8-Prager-776. We are in St. Pete. Kurt, hey, Mark Davis, welcome. Nice to have you on the Dennis Prager Show. How are you?
Greetings and salutations, sir.
Hi.
Just a quick observation and just for your listeners. Having the National Guard on duty or on alert is one thing, but there's a very important thing that Governor Evers will probably not do. He has a choice of having them show up armed or unarmed. They can show up with a rifle, but with no magazines.
Yeah, I think there's a middle ground in there. I think there's a middle ground. God, are people not hearing me? I think there's a middle ground in there of armed but not lethally. The sort of the rubber bullet tear gas window that lies somewhere between shooting to kill and just standing there. I think the bar for responding lethally should be really, really high. My goal for all of these folks is to disperse rioters. My goal is not dead people. If people bring deadly force, they should be met with deadly force, whether it's the National Guard responding to rioters or, BLM people attacking Kyle Rittenhouse. Deadly force begets deadly force. But to the extent that it is possible to disperse rioters, dissuade rioters, send them properly home with rubber bullets, tear gas, or just a just a big vehicle rumbling toward you. I would love for that to happen with a minimum of riot or death. So, and again, all of this, we have to do this. We have to entertain these things. So I should probably say every couple of segments that my great wish is for all of this to be moot. My great wish is for none of this to actually happen. And in fact, why do you think I want all those National Guard troops in Kenosha now rather than cooling their heels an hour and a half down the road? So that people who are sitting there just thinking about causing trouble, if this jury dares to follow the facts and the law and the evidence and acquit Kyle Rittenhouse, that if they're even thinking of causing trouble, they look at a wall of 500 guard troops and go, maybe that's not the best idea. And I know that these things can move at a bureaucratic snail's pace. And in fact, just, having done 1 million trials in my life, the word will come out that the jury has reached a verdict. The word will come out. And then there's paperwork and there's processing. There may be some yoga. Who knows what's involved? We'll know that a verdict has happened, but we won't know what it is for a good hour-ish afterward. Mark Davison for Dennis. Stick around.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. Sometimes there are policies so destructive that at first you don't believe they're true. Joe Biden is currently defending one, his plan to award $450,000 to migrants separated from their families after entering the U.S. illegally. Children of deceased U.S. soldiers are separated from their parents permanently. They don't receive this kind of money. And migrants who enter the U.S. legally certainly don't get this kind of payout. The really big jackpot, it seems, is being reserved for the lawbreakers. There are some obvious truths here. First, behavior that's subsidized gets repeated. Joe Biden is effectively inviting many more illegal immigrants to breach America's open borders. Second, he's betting over time the payoffs will benefit his party in political terms. Meanwhile, the vast majority of Americans watch in shock and dismay as our president, the country's chief law enforcement officer, brazenly rewards lawbreaking, a clear violation of his oath to defend our nation's laws. It's a sorry sight indeed.
The Pilgrims. They were poor. They were outcasts. They were enemies of the state for their refusal to submit to the Church of England.
The Mayflower was a cargo ship, but the most precious cargo that was carried across the Atlantic were the ideas in the hearts of the Pilgrims that were drawn from the Bible.
Not only did they start self-rule, they started free trade, capitalism, land ownership, all in 10 years with 51 people.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
You called your son. You personally promised him you would be here.
Lucas, I don't know how to help you.
Your daddy loves you, you gotta know it, pal.
Do you feel the love?
Prayer is a powerful thing, Ethan. It really does work, if you believe.
What reason does he have to care about some guy who's supposed to be his dad, but he's never around? I can't do it again. I'm not ready for this, man.
I'm done with you.
We all deserve a second chance. Right, Ethan?
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
And we're asking what you think on the Dennis Prager Show. Mark Davis filling in, 1-8-Prager-776. We are in Chicago. John, Mark Davis, welcome. Happy Tuesday. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Doing great, thanks.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Kyle Rittenhouse situation. I live not far from there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's stipulate that Kyle Rittenhouse acted in self-defense, even if the jury determines he acted in self-defense, and even if he in his heart knows that he acted in self-defense.
All right.
I want to ask you a question, but I just want to tell you my perspective before I ask you my question.
Sure.
I don't think that Kyle Rittenhouse stopped any destruction that night, despite the fact that he says he helped someone with a sprained ankle. There's no evidence he provided essential medical care to anybody. I think even if he acted in self-defense, that doesn't mean he's some kind of hero. And I want to ask you a really simple question. Don't you think he should have stayed home?
No kid of mine is going to arm up and walk into a riot, if that's the answer you seek. I think Kyle had a big case of junior G-man syndrome. He's very full of himself, wanted to go do something. I think there's a noble intent in there. Streets are on fire with rioting. Cops aren't there. Doggone it, I'm going to go see what I can do. All right, lovely. That doesn't mean it's a great idea. So if that's what you're looking to extract from me, I get it. But that's not what the trial is about. And not that you're saying that it is. So, and as far go ahead. Your turn. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you. I agree with you. I'm not really talking about the trial. Because,
I understand.
Again, if the jury determines he acted in self-defense, I'm not going to go to Kenosha and demonstrate. I think the people who were rioting that night were criminals, and I think they shouldn't have done that. But I also think that Kyle Rittenhouse shouldn't have decided, hey, it's my job to be self-appointed vigilante defender of some guy's used car lot in another state.
Vigilante is a strong term, and I don't think it applies here. If you think there's a lack of wisdom in his decision, I think you'll get a lot of agreement with that. But you mentioned the notion of heroism, people conferring heroism on him. I think some of that is a pendulum swing reaction to balance out the people who are condemning him as having a malicious intent. And, of course, the favorite thing of the day, as a white supremacist. I think there's probably a good part of his heart that motivated him, but it didn't mean that it was smart to go. And so everybody's coming at him. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So are you saying that to portray him as a hero is just as misguided and wrong as portraying him as a white
supremacist? At all. Not at all. I think hero is overstating a sound and praiseworthy intent. And the denigration of him is without foundation. Mark Davison for Dennis, 1 hour down, 2 to go. Do stick around.
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
Are you at all thinking about some relief on any of your mandates?
Listen, there's mandate fatigue everywhere, including with yours truly, so let there be no doubt about that. At the moment, no.
This guy is a scumbag. He is awful. Contrast that with Governor DeSantis, America's greatest governor, most courageous, and just announced his re-election campaign to become governor of Florida again. A well-deserved campaign of a man who has been overly courageous with now the lowest COVID rates in the country. Can you get if it's COVID rate, death rates, or virus rates? It's whatever it is. It's the lowest in the country. Pursuing alternative treatments like monoclonal antibodies. The first major state to reopen. Phenomenal economic figures. No mask mandates for children. And in the school districts that are doing that, DeSantis is clamping down. He banned critical race theory, and DeSantis has done this in a logical and reasonable way. I'm inspired by his leadership versus the weak Vichy French Republicans across the country that continually pander to Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson. Ron DeSantis has been terrific. But Ron DeSantis understands the promise of the Constitution, unlike Murphy and most Republicans in the country, where Ron DeSantis says, a year and a half ago, we started with 15 days to slow the spread. Now it's get jabbed or lose your job. You see, what Ron DeSantis recognizes is that the sovereign is the people, not him. It's not we, the Ron DeSantis, or we, the governor of Florida. No, it's the people's rights that come first.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Creeps who've had some financial success in life. We're the bad. We need to be punished. Although not Pelosi. Did you hear she pushed back on the capital gains tax increase? She didn't like that, and she's a wealthy woman. But anyway, it turns out the Nonpartisan Tax Policy Center has taken a look at Build Back Better. They're saying about 30% of middle-income households will be taxed and pay additional taxes, have a tax increase in 2022. Whoops! No, say it isn't so, Joe. Say it isn't so. Come on. Come on, man. Did you lie to us again? Did you not tell the truth? And some low and middle class and middle income households, according to the Nonpartisan Tax Policy Center, which has reviewed Build Back Better, they will pay more per year in taxes if the plan is implemented. You know, obviously they sat around the White House, they said, let's try this. Let's say that this massive spending won't cost anything. You know, it'll be a little bit like Biden calling Satchel Paige a Negro, and then we'll say he didn't call Satchel Paige a Negro. We'll see if they buy it. It doesn't cost a thing. It's free. Just like free college is really free. Wink, wink. Bunch of liars.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. Sometimes there are policies so destructive that at first you don't believe they're true. Joe Biden is currently defending one, his plan to award $450,000 to migrants separated from their families after entering the U.S. illegally. Children of deceased U.S. soldiers are separated from their parents permanently. They don't receive this kind of money. And migrants who enter the U.S. legally certainly don't get this kind of payout. The really big jackpot, it seems, is being reserved for the lawbreakers. There are some obvious truths here. First, behavior that's subsidized gets repeated. Joe Biden is effectively inviting many more illegal immigrants to breach America's open borders. Second, he's betting over time the payoffs will benefit his party in political terms. Meanwhile, the vast majority of Americans watch in shock and dismay as our president, the country's chief law enforcement officer, brazenly rewards lawbreaking, a clear violation of his oath to defend our nation's laws. It's a sorry sight indeed.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Burka.
Right now, based upon how the judge is responding to the way that this evil bunch of hyenas are trying to make... the fact of the matter of this, Rittenhouse killed 2 people. Both of them were criminals. One of them had just been released from jail for doing what? Raping young boys. If it were up to me, that would be a death penalty automatic in America. Rape a child, death. End of story. That's the reason nations create capital punishment. He got out, which is just so understanding and empathetic of us. He threatened people all day, and then he used force and threatened Kyle Rittenhouse, who was there to help people when he wasn't a community pool lifeguard. And that man shot to death, the child rapist. Rot in hell. The second man, oh yes, with a rap sheet for what? Assaulting women. He got killed as well after he swung at Kyle Rittenhouse with a skateboard to his head. Not a lot of tears will be shed for that man, I'm sure, in any community of decent Americans. And then the third guy who approached him with a Glock pointed to Kyle's head, who then had his bicep blown off by that brave young man. Come on, guys. Acquit, or better yet, mistrial.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
It is the Dennis Prager Show for this Tuesday, the 16th of November. Mark Davis in for Dennis. Dennis is back tomorrow. We're here together today, and I'm very grateful. Phone lines are open for you at 1-8-PRAGER-776, 1-8-PRAGER-776. Working our way through the Rittenhouse trial verdict vigil as the jurors gather. And oh, to be a fly on the wall. Oh, to see what's going on there and how that whole process goes. I'm guessing that as soon as their verdict comes back, whatever that may be, there'll be a lot of attention paid to it. I wonder if these jurors will wind up being, interviewed by Diane Sawyer down the road for something. I have no idea. And much will depend on what they actually do. Let me give you a thumbnail of where I am, put it in contrast or comparison to where you are. 1-8-PRAGER-776, 1-8-PRAGER-776. When this trial began, we all knew how the ingredients were set. Namely, that here is a kid who, for whatever reason, ventures into Kenosha. Yes, it's across a state line, but he's very much a local. There's nothing funnier than watching, let's say, Washington, D.C. area journalists who cross from D.C. into Virginia 14 times a day freak out about Kyle Rittenhouse crossing a state line. Similarly, an entire media culture that cares not one bit about waves of immigrants crossing our national border, they all of a sudden get the vapors and have conniption fits about a kid driving from Illinois into Wisconsin. Spare me. But anyway, the default settings going in were pretty clear. That here was a kid who, for whatever reason, thought he could be, or says, can't read minds, this is what he says, said he thought he could be of value on the streets of Kenosha. Things were getting ugly and unruly, and so he and his 17-year-old brain said, I'm going to arm up and head into this thing and see if I can help. Now, we can debate all day whether that was smart, whether any kid of yours would be allowed to do such a thing, but that's not what he's on trial for. He is on trial for homicidal acts. And these are things that involve the rule of law. These are things that involve evidence. These are things that are arrived at by an examination of facts, not whether you like Kyle, like Trump, like or dislike Black Lives Matter, how you feel about the Jacob Blake shooting. None of those things, how you feel, how I feel about any of those things, none of those things matter. And that's what's hard. It's so counterintuitive because we go rushing in with everything. And also, in the last hour, gentleman was talking about some of the heroism conferred upon Kyle Rittenhouse. I'd stop short of that. I'm just trying to keep people from beating the kid up reputationally as if they know that he was going down there. And listen, there are people who believe that the reason he had that AR-15 is he wanted to go down there and shoot him some black people. Well, as it turns out, he shot 3 white guys. So, amid all of the mind reading and all of the preconceived notions, I started to consume the trial in detail, and I said, I'm going to do something really crazy and revolutionary. I'm going to see if the prosecution meets its obligation. I'm going to see if they meet the burden of proof. And then I'm going to see what kind of job the defense does in attempting to dismantle that. Now, I don't just view, after having engaged in that process, I don't just view this prosecution as inept. In fact, it's worse than inept. I believe there is actual malice at hand here in taking 48 stinking hours to, see how many days it's taken to this trial to sort of understand what happened? Kyle certainly posed no threat to the community, so they could have taken some time, but the streets demanded otherwise. The mob needed his head on a stick. And so with that pressure mounting, a district attorney's office, which clearly skews left, I'll tell you how we know in just a moment, met the demands of the street, caved to the mob, and said, okay, bam, we're going to indict him for various homicide-based charges. Now, I didn't know in watching this. Again, here's another thing that I did not pass judgment on until I saw them and listened to them. Again, great concept. I recommend it highly. Watch things, consume things, hear what people say, and evaluate them as they happen rather than plugging in your preconceived notions. But with regard to Kyle's weapon, a clearly firearms illiterate prosecutor, Mr. Binger, cast aspersion on anyone. He spent a few minutes in his summation talking about how ridiculous it is for people to try to use an AR-15 for self-protection. What? Let me introduce you to a ton of people who have done exactly that. He also cast aspersion on anyone who would even think of heading into such a skirmish. Now, again, I think I've said 4 times, might not be the smartest thing in the world. No kid of mine's going to do it. And it's not my definition of wisdom. But that's not what Mr. Binger was doing. Mr. Binger was conferring evil intent, malicious intent, criminal intent. And it's all based on the big, scary gun. The big, scary gun. And then we get to the pièce de résistance for Mr. Binger, who's not only firearms illiterate, weaponry is not the only thing where he needs some schooling. Apparently, the law is another main area where Mr. Binger is a bit behind the curve, saying that you lose your ability to claim self-defense if you come into a situation armed. What? This will come as news to virtually everyone who has properly defended himself while armed, entering a situation. This is a horrible, horrible example of prosecutorial dispatch that we have seen, and man, do they deserve to lose. And the other good byproduct of this, as I get ready to go to your calls, 1-8-PRAGER-776, 1-8-PRAGER-776, is light needs to be shown with great intensity on these district attorney offices who politically persecute people. Kyle Rittenhouse this is the kind of case, and you'll see it every once in a while. Somebody will have something happen to their house, their place of business, on the street, and the police will go, okay, let's stay, don't leave town. We need to take a look at this. And they'll take a look at it and go, pretty well self-defense, no charges filed. That is exactly what this case needed to be. Why wasn't it? Because the streets demanded otherwise. The mob demanded otherwise. We're in Torrance, California. Christian, hey, Mark Davis in for Dennis. How are you? Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday.
Hey.
Yeah, I keep hearing everybody saying that people are calling Kyle Rittenhouse a hero for what he did, but I don't really hear that from the right, just from the prosecutors and then the left media. And even your previous caller seems to have bought into that. I think, the main argument is that he acted in self-defense.
Oh, there's some folks who've gone beyond that. Yes, I mean, that's the preponderance. But I've spoken to some folks who just think that he's just King Boy Scout for wandering into a rug. It follows the narrative of, the police aren't there. Here's a fine young man who's just stepped in to fill the void. And I get that. That resonates with me. But 17-year-old boys don't need to be filling that void.
Yeah, but who specifically is calling him a hero?
Talk to people, walk the streets. Just you'll find it. You'll Google Kyle Rittenhouse hero, and I think you'll find something.
Head on. Oh, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, and a word about that, and thanks for bringing that up. A word about that. A lot of people, and it's fine, have said, yeah, well, one guy was like a horrible abuser, and the other guy was horrible, pedophile, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, and if your point is that these were, that Kyle Rittenhouse had no criminal intent, no criminal record, while the people he shot did, Okay, in terms of who's heroic and who's not praiseworthy. Okay. But there's nothing about what somebody's done in the past that makes them more of a candidate for shooting. This guy, these people, Kyle Rittenhouse doesn't walk because the guy he shot was a pedophile. Kyle Rittenhouse walks because the guy he shot was attacking him. Okay? It does not matter what resume somebody brings into a self-defense situation. It doesn't become a smidge more okay to kill somebody who's done some bad things in the past. Just saying. Probably worth stating. You got things worth stating? Bring them. 1-8-PRAGER-776. Mark Davis in for Dennis. Stick around.
Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border.
Human trafficking.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Judge Thomas, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Man, I miss my father, and I want him to be here with me, but he's not.
We all had something in common. A lot of us were miserable. We had no fathers in our lives.
This is how I began the life of crime. I desired to have a father who would tell me that what I did was wrong.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
I grew up poor, which is even worse than being poor.
We would have sandwiches with no meat.
My American dream entailed working hard and making $20,000 a year. But I surpassed that goal and became a corporate CEO.
We'll all be able to say, free at last, free at last.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
This is why we're fighting for the soul of America.
You should be able to share ideas without fear of being fired from your job or shouted down.
You are not to be heard. This is one of the few things we have no precedent for in the United States.
You have the right to remain silent.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Dennis Prager Show for this Tuesday, the 16th day of November. Mark Davis filling in for Dennis here from 660 AM The Answer in Dallas, Fort Worth, where it's November, which means it's 82 degrees. Welcome, everybody, but that's okay. It's Texas fall. We'll have ice storms in no time. It's if you don't like the weather, wait a minute. That's probably something people say all over the country. We're finding out what people are saying all over the country on our phone lines at 1-8-Prager-776. The Rittenhouse verdict vigil continues. They're 2+ hours into deliberation. There's no way to know how long this will take, and there's a kind of some back porch legal wisdom that says if they come back pretty quickly, it probably smacks of an acquittal. I don't know. I'd invest in that a little bit. If it takes a longer time, that doesn't necessarily mean anything because it's an involved case. There's a lot to slice and dice through. So if this goes even beyond today and into tomorrow, I don't think that necessarily speaks to acquittal or conviction. And of course, we're talking about what happens if there is an acquittal, and will we have a community in Kenosha and a country that is mature enough and resilient enough so that some folks can withstand a verdict they don't agree with. Because trust me on this, I've been alive for 64 years. I've had verdicts I agreed with and those I did not. And thus shall it ever be. All right, 1-8-Prager-776. We are in Columbia, South Carolina. William, hey, Mark Davis in for Dennis. How are you? Happy Tuesday.
How you doing today?
Good, thank you.
I just wanted to voice my opinion. Mm-hmm. It seems like everything that be on these shows be so negative. I listen to talk shows all day. I even used to listen to the great old Rush Limbaugh.
Right.
I'm a black guy. I'm about 60 years old. But they talk about Black Lives Matter like they the salt of the earth. But everybody like matter.
Well, let's take things bit by bit. The notion of negativity is something that resonates a lot with me. I always tell conservatives that we should speak in terms of what we are for. I mean, we're against open borders. We're against, transgender radicalism. But let's talk about what we're for. We are for strong borders. We are for your daughter not having a dude competing next to her in the lane at the track meet. We are for we are for fiscal sanity. So I think there's some good messaging advice for you in that. When it comes to Black Lives Matter, the tragedy of the Black Lives Matter phenomenon is they took a sentence which is undeniably true, that Black Lives Matter, of course they do, and turned it into a group that is at its core Marxist, seeking to sow racial division and tell lies about the police. There's nothing praiseworthy about the group. There are very few things praiseworthy about the group. The sentence is self-evidently true.
Okay. Because I was thinking maybe y'all figured that no Black Lives Matter.
No, well, that's why I'm glad you asked. I love you, man. I appreciate it very, very much. Alrighty, 1-8-Prager-776, and we are next in Texas. Belinda, hey, Mark Davis in for Dennis. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing well, thank you. I just wanted to say just a few things. One, I'm wondering if the judge can do anything if the jury were to come back with a guilty verdict on however many counts now on the table, since he, threw some out. So I'm wondering if the judge would intervene. I know that I really sense that Kenosha will, again, I think those people will attempt again to react immaturely and destroy their own community. So, I hate to say that, but I just think that there's just people who really have a poverty mentality, who don't know what it is to preserve and take care of and uplift their community instead of bringing it down, because then they would be doing that for themselves. And then I also wondered if that guy, the prosecutor, prosecutor. Is he running for DA? I hope I read correctly. I may have not, because then that would show a motive for him to be, panhandling, lack of a better word, to the masses there to get elected.
Or pandering. Okay, a couple of things. As far as Mr. Binger's, it's a good material. You set it up. Let me give you a couple of things. I'll give it right back to you. Is Mr. Binger, does he want to be DA? The word is that he does. That's not a problem. I would think that if you or I are running for DA, I guess to a degree it might make us want to pander, might make us want to, strike some red meat issues. But I think what we'd like to do more than anything is win. What we'd like to do more than anything is be respected. And so to that end, this trial has not been a good campaign video for Mr. Binger. As far as what you mentioned at the beginning of your call, is there such a thing as a judge seeing a jury verdict and saying, oh, no, and just stepping in and intervening? Yes, it's called a judgment notwithstanding verdict. It is incredibly rare. I don't think there's any chance at all of it happening in this case with Judge Schroeder. It involves juries reaching conclusions that are almost humanly impossible to find, that involve demonstrable dismissal of things that were right in front of their faces. And I know there's people listening that go, well, yeah, that's sort of what this would be. Look, I feel pretty strongly about Kyle's acquittal, too, kind of like I did about OJ's conviction. But does it rise to a level where a judge would kick in, with non obstante verdicto, as they say in Latin? I bet not. So whatever the jury says is going to go. So that's my wish. Good questions, ma'am. Thank you very much. 1-8-Prager-776, and we are in Santa Rosa, California. Kevin, hey, Mark Davison for Dennis. How are you?
Hello, Mark. This is Kevin. Just wanted to give you my point of view on the Mark Rittenhouse situation.
Sure. Sure, go ahead. Go right ahead.
I just wanted to give you my point of view on the Mark Rittenhouse situation.
So this is where you start. That's where you start that process. Go right ahead.
Yeah. So you were talking about Mark. You don't think that a 17-year-old should be filling the void of the police officers when they weren't able to do the job? My opinion is our country was founded on the blood of 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, and 19-year-olds for generations.
Absolutely.
So going out there with a gun, protecting his country, I believe he should be filling that void. Those are the people. He was a responsible kid. He may be 17 years old, but he went out there with the right intentions.
Oh, I think he did go. I think he did go with the right intentions. I will not have his reputation savaged. However, when you talk about the 17 and 18 and 19-year-olds whose blood spilled at the birth of this country, and those of roughly similar age whose blood is spilled while we've been alive in the war on terror, et cetera, those are people who the first thing they did was say, hey, I'm 18 and I'm going to sign up for the military, do exactly what the military requires, show my devotion to duty, go through the training, and then they'll give me a gun to do certain things. Kyle kind of short-circuited that process by saying, I'm going to grab the AR-15 and head to Kenosha. That does not make him a bad kid. It doesn't make him a vigilante. Certainly doesn't make him an active shooter. I love that usage by the prosecution. But if we are going to think warmly, as we should, about people of a young age who have the willingness to hop into the fray, it also brings with it a certain level of responsibility. And just watching rioting on TV and saying, I'm in, is not the smartest thing. But guess what? That's not what Kyle's on trial for. Mark Davison for Dennis. Be right back.
Streaming on Salem Now.
You called your son. You personally promised him you would be here.
Lucas, I don't know how to help you.
Your daddy loves you. You gotta know it, pal.
Prayer is a powerful thing, Ethan. It really does work, if you believe.
What reason does he have to care about some guy who's supposed to be his dad, but he's never around? I can't do it. I can't. I'm not ready for this, man.
I'm done with you.
We all deserve a second chance. Right, Ethan?
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
Obama tore this country down. No one stood up to him. Nobody. Because he was black. You need to wake up.
Choose your house, nigga. I didn't call you a nigga.
Oh, okay. That's a big difference.
You're Uncle Tom.
And Uncle Tom is somebody who has sold out by embracing the white man.
Uncle Tom,
bedwench,
bootlicker,
black white supremacist,
chucking and jiving,
house Negro,
coon,
Uncle Tom, coon.
I have a coon award over there. Most black people don't believe that other blacks can be independent, free thinkers.
I believe the legacy and the ancestry of black Americans is being insulted every single day. I will not pretend to be a victim in this country. I know that makes many people on the left uncomfortable.
The liberal will try to control a black person through the concept of racism because they know that we are very proud, emotional people.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
History-making tax and spend disaster. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. And this is why people were so angry at the Republicans in the Senate and the House who have supported Biden's scheme. Did you hear Trump was giving a speech Monday night? The Republican Congressional Committee had a dinner, and he blasted the 13 Republicans in the House. I think Nicole Maliotakis was in the room. She had to be squirming. Because I'm sure President Trump held back, as he does. I'm sure he was very genteel and, very discreet.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
The recent war on history threatens to erase America's past. The Pilgrims, hailed by Movie Guide as inspiring, combats the lies to reveal America's true history.
They were poor. They were outcasts. They were enemies of the state for their refusal to submit to the Church of England.
The Mayflower was a cargo ship, but the most precious cargo that was carried across the Atlantic were the ideas in the hearts of the Pilgrims that were drawn from the Bible. The idea of self-government and rule from within. All these are within that body of Pilgrims.
The Pilgrims founded America for all intents and purposes.
Find out what everyone is talking about. Watch this new documentary to see God's providence in the lives of the Pilgrims.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
It is the Dennis Prager Show for this Tuesday, the 16th of November. Mark Davis filling in here from big, thriving DFW at 660 a.m. The Answer, where I do the morning show, and also known as pregame for the Dennis Prager Show on the days where I do this program. And it's always a joy. Back to your calls, and on a wide variety, boy, believe you me, a wide variety of things, and I deeply appreciate it. So many angles to examine as we sit in patient or not so patient vigil for the Rittenhouse jurors. And listen, this could take a while. I don't know if this happens today. It could happen in the next hour, or it could be, or they could take days. Or anything in between. You never know. But let us pray for peace on the streets of Kenosha, no matter what, and for clarity and courage from this jury. Speaking of courage, here's another weird thing. There are certain things that should not take courage. Doing the right thing as a juror should take diligence. It should take attentiveness. But courage? Well, in today's America, it does, because you got a target on your back if you don't bring back the required verdict. As far as education, it now takes courage to get history right, because you've got to fend off activism at every turn. American history and civics education is at a turning point. Will we allow bureaucrats and lobbyists to choose what kids are taught, or are we going to teach them the whole truth? My friends at Hillsdale College argue for teaching actual, accurate history. They've made the Hillsdale 1776 curriculum downloadable for free at k12.hillsdale.edu. k12.hillsdale.edu. Not just for teachers, but for you and me, so that we can share it with other concerned Americans. It's a complete K-12 history and civics curriculum designed to give educators guidance, not mandates, to allow students to learn the tragedies and triumphs. One of the things that just gets my goat the worst is when people come at me, and maybe they come at you, and they say, "Oh, you just don't want kids taught about slavery." Well, it's like, what? Who's anti-slavery teaching? You don't want kids to know there was such a thing as Jim Crow. What? Our history books are replete with the pain and suffering that happened before we traveled this journey of enlightenment. The tragedies and the triumphs. I mean, there are people who want to keep us mired in the 1950s, if not the 1850s, as if there's been no progress. American history as it really happened. It is an incredible story. Should we look back at decades past, centuries past, and go, "Oh, my Lord, I can't believe that happened"? Sure. And then look at the progress we've made and say, "Oh, my heavens, what a magnificent country." Not because we fixed everything, not because we're perfect now, but because this is the greatest country in the history of the world. And we've had an incredible journey, and we're still on it. And it's best for us to travel it together. So Hillsdale is all about this. America's future depends upon an honest, candid look at our history. So download the Hillsdale 1776 curriculum for free today at k12.hillsdale.edu. Sound good? Okay. All right, here's something that ought to sound good. Let's grab some calls. We are in Los Angeles. Joseph, Mark Davis in for Dennis. How are you, sir?
Hello.
Hey.
I'm here. I wanted to tell you something about how these people will be hunted down after this happens, just like the Nazis in World War II.
What, the jury?
No. I'm not talking about Rittenhouse today.
I'm sorry. Then who? Oh, then who?
I wanted to get off the subject and show you something just as important.
All right, we got about 60 seconds, so let's go. Where are you going? Boy, time's a clicking, sir. Who are you talking about? Well, maybe that's God saying, get to the break on time. So, I know, I tell you what's right. Maybe I came at you fast and hard with a ticking clock. And by the way, I of all people am open to the divergent topic. It doesn't have to be all Kyle all the time. So do me a favor, get us back if you want to, and gather the thoughts, and I'll come to you, and we'll take a breath and see what and see where that was. I confess to a certain curiosity now. So, all right, I certainly have curiosity as to what your thoughts are on Kyle, the trial, the jury, et cetera, et cetera. Let me plant a seed about something where I don't mind going. And we're almost done with it. We're 20 minutes from done with the second hour. Maybe somewhere in the third hour, can we have a word about Mr. Bannon? Steve Bannon makes Donald Trump look like Paul Ryan. Okay, that's how cranked up to 11 he is, okay? And I'm only half kidding about that. And Bannon has not been my favorite messenger at times, but I think his heart and head have been largely in the right place. And I think there's a certain type of nervous genius working there in Bannon's head, or has been over the years. But the issue before us here is the notion of whether you can ignore a congressional subpoena. We'll talk about that as we progress. Stick around.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. Sometimes there are policies so destructive that at first you don't believe they're true. Joe Biden is currently defending one, his plan to award $450,000 to migrants separated from their families after entering the U.S. illegally. Children of deceased U.S. soldiers are separated from their parents permanently. They don't receive this kind of money. And migrants who enter the U.S. legally certainly don't get this kind of payout. The really big jackpot, it seems, is being reserved for the lawbreakers. There are some obvious truths here. First, behavior that's subsidized gets repeated. Joe Biden is effectively inviting many more illegal immigrants to breach America's open borders. Second, he's betting over time the payoffs will benefit his party in political terms. Meanwhile, the vast majority of Americans watch in shock and dismay as our president, the country's chief law enforcement officer, brazenly rewards lawbreaking, a clear violation of his oath to defend our nation's laws. It's a sorry sight indeed.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Right now, based upon how the judge is responding to the way that this evil bunch of hyenas are trying to make... the fact of the matter of this, Rittenhouse killed 2 people. Both of them were criminals. One of them had just been released from jail for doing what? Raping young boys. If it were up to me, that would be a death penalty automatic in America. Rape a child, death. End of story. That's the reason nations create capital punishment. He got out, which is just so understanding and empathetic of us. He threatened people all day, and then he used force and threatened Kyle Rittenhouse, who was there to help people when he wasn't a community pool lifeguard. And that man shot to death the child rapist. Rot in hell. The second man, oh yes, with a rap sheet for what? Assaulting women. He got killed as well after he swung at Kyle Rittenhouse with a skateboard to his head. Not a lot of tears will be shed for that man, I'm sure, in any community of decent Americans. And then the third guy who approached him with a Glock pointed to Kyle's head, who then had his bicep blown off by that brave young man. Come on, guys. Acquit, or better yet, mistrial.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
The Pilgrims. They were poor. They were outcasts. They were enemies of the state for their refusal to submit to the Church of England.
The Mayflower was a cargo ship, but the most precious cargo that was carried across the Atlantic were the ideas in the hearts of the Pilgrims that were drawn from the Bible.
Not only did they start self-rule, they started free trade, capitalism, land ownership, all in 10 years with 51 people.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
It is the Dennis Prager Show for this Tuesday, the 16th day of November. Mark Davis filling in from 660 a.m. The Answer, Dallas, Fort Worth. Follow me in the world of Twitter, at Mark Davis, M-A-R-K Davis. Lots of slinging hot topics goes on there all the time. Appreciate that. The ones we're doing here for talk show purposes, here at the Salem News Channel, where you can watch everything at salemnewschannel.com as well, or on the very nifty Salem News Channel app. All at 1-8-PRAGER-776 on the phone. So let's hop back to your calls and see where you are and see what we're talking about. The many, many layers. You guys are doing a wonderful job of keeping a lot of plates spinning and talking about many, many angles of the trial itself, what is before the jury right now, and what's, I guess, their third hour of deliberations, and just kind of where the country is and where we are societally and what everybody's bringing to the table, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Alrighty, let us see. Let us head to Detroit. And Lance, that is you. Mark Davison for Dennis. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. How about you?
Hi. Great, thank you.
Yes, the problem I'm having with this trial and this whole situation is in other parts of the country and other situations, etc. If you pull a gun out on somebody, whether you shoot it, fire it, or whatever, that's considered assault. And this case is reminding me so much of the Trayvon Martin case.
Wow.
And
why?
I really believe that we need a law on the books that basically don't start nothing, it won't be nothing.
Don't start none, won't be none.
No.
I think these definitions already exist. Assault has a definition. It's when that's when you start the problem. If I start the problem, I am guilty of assault. If I respond to a palpable threat, a serious threat, then that's self-defense. And that's what the prosecution is trying to point out with regard to Kyle Rittenhouse, is that he did not act in self-defense, that he was guilty as an aggressor. And the defense point is, no, he wasn't. Everybody he shot was attacking him. That was the defense attorney's point. So I think we kind of have those definitions in the law. We just need to apply them properly. Make sense?
Right. So that's why I mirrored the Trayvon Martin case, because it was like, Zimmerman was the aggressor. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I don't know what you mean, because I don't know that that's true. I don't know that that's true for a minute. I think we might be using a bad example there.
How is it a bad example?
Because George Zimmerman's bloody head makes it a bad example, and I ain't gonna relitigate that. Today's busy enough. 1-8-Prager-776. We're in Los Angeles. Brent, hey, Mark Davis in for Dennis. How are you doing?
Hello, Mark.
Hey.
Painfully, this is the first time I'm calling in to disagree with you.
We'll somehow get through it. It's all right.
Well, I want to bless, thank, and honor the breathtakingly heroic Kyle Rittenhouse. And I think he has earned America's respect and reverence and love for his righteous, solitary resolve to protect our nation from the wild and rabid jackals hysterically attempting to murder him and our nation. And
okay.
They all had evilly murderous intent, then as now, and he deserves a Medal of Honor. And also, Joan of Arc was 17 years old when she set out to save.
Wow, it's getting a little. I get where you're coming from, and I don't, in a polar way disagree with you, but it's getting a little deep even for me. I think this might be a little psychology here, a little like old psychoanalysis. I think that we confer onto Kyle, those of us who are vociferously anti-rioting and decidedly against defunding the police, and who seek to attract attention to the ill effects of defunding the police. And those of us who have those items in our heads, myself among them, we take a look at Kyle, who looks at some rioting and says, doggone it, I'm going to go see if I can be of service. Is there something praiseworthy about that? Sure there is. Doesn't make him Captain America right off the bat, okay? A questionably trained 17-year-old driving into the fray. It's possible for two things to be true at the same time. And here are the two things that strike me as true at the same time. He had no ill intent, didn't even deserve to be prosecuted for this, but not the greatest idea in the world. If indeed there is a force of people who need to respond to a vacuum of policing, maybe it doesn't need to be our 17-year-old boys, even the ones who have hearts of gold and a big AR-15. And there are matters of degree there and matters of nuance there. I'm really glad this gentleman was here, because last hour the guy said, I haven't heard anybody confer heroism on Kyle. Well, there you are. And I think that a lot of that is psychoanalysis 2.0. A lot of that has been to counteract or provide balance to those who have been savaging him. He wanted to go kill black people. He's a white supremacist. He's a domestic terrorist. And there is a part of human nature that when you hear over criticism, that maybe there's an instinct to respond with overpraise. So, I hope that very long paragraph made sense. As we see what the jury says about him, it's interesting to evaluate what we all say about him. I will tell you this. You know what? I think he did a remarkable job on the stand. Do you know what a big gamble that was? You know how relatively rarely it's a good idea to take the defendant and put him on the stand? And you may think, well, why not? The defendant is like the perfect person to put on the stand. Not always, because not everybody has, especially when you're this close to the situation, it's your life hanging in the balance. Sometimes you're the last person who needs to be on the stand. This needs to be in the hands of trained professionals, whose lives are not hanging in the balance. Let them do the heavy lifting for you. The defendant often screws up, gets too emotional, gets undisciplined. Kyle did none of these things. He was a magnificent witness for his own cause. And we'll see how that goes when the jury comes back. They're still deliberating, and I guess so are we. Mark Davis in for Dennis. Be right back.
Streaming on Salem Now.
We understand that a plane has crashed into...
The people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
Biggest and most costly manhunt in U.S. history.
United States killed Osama bin Laden.
There are reports surfacing that Al-Qaeda has placed a $50,000 US bounty on the heads of any U.S. Navy SEALs.
Nobody's going to survive that. There's nobody in that.
This is the single largest loss of life in Afghanistan in a single incident.
Most of them are U.S. Navy SEALs.
We discovered bullets in the bodies of the Navy SEALs. The military threw them away.
More likely than not, that supports a shootout on board.
Anybody out there, we have a fallen angel.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery. There is a whole big cottage industry for racism. If racism went away, a lot of people would be unemployed.
The mob during the Minneapolis riots following the death of George Floyd. A bunch of white thugs, frankly, burning down the city's traditional black and Asian business district.
They're racist. Everything's racist.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Man, I miss my father, and I want him to be here with me, but he's not.
We all had something in common. A lot of us were miserable. We had no fathers in our lives.
This is how I began the life of crime. I desired to have a father who would tell me that what I did was wrong.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Judge Thomas, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Got some Beatles on the brain these days. getting better all the time. I sure hope so. Please, Lord, let that be true at some point, maybe through the next couple of election cycles. For those of you with Beatles on the brain, get ready for Thanksgiving, because then the Peter Jackson documentary, Get Back, which is kind of a revisitation of the 1970 time frame that was represented in the already existing film Let It Be, accompanying the album of that same name. It's 6 hours over 3 episodes, and that's going to roll out and Paul himself said it resulted in my viewing the breakup of the Beatles in a very different way. That everybody thinks we were all miserable, we're all at each other's throats, and we were just having a great time being creative, et cetera, et cetera. So there's the Get Back documentary that comes, I think, on Disney Plus over Thanksgiving. But already existing is the massive book that McCartney has written. I forget the guy who helped him on this. It's like every lyric I've ever written and the story behind it. That's like 2 volumes. I think it'll set you back like $75, worth every dime. It is called The Lyrics. It's by Paul McCartney. So go check that out. All righty. Let us roll to Michigan. Jim. Hey, Mark Davison for Dennis. How are you?
Pretty good, sir. I'm feeding America right now.
Thank you.
Anyways, running the tractor out here in the field.
Thank you, sir.
There was, 15 people watched a woman being raped on a train in New York. Shame on them 15 people. I'd been there. I pulled out my Colt 45.
I know. I first I think it was in October. I think it was Philadelphia. The DA is pushing back on that a little bit. The notion of a bunch of people just standing there, like videoing it on their phones while some woman is savagely attacked. But to the extent that we did not have the kind of heroism that you describe, someone intervening to say, "Oh hell no, not on this train, not while I'm here." You're right. That did not happen. We need more of that. And I think it's a reference to the kind of instinct that Kyle had, which tends to be a praiseworthy instinct. It's to want to be of value when a person is in need, when a community is in need. That is not something that we want to suppress. It's certainly not something that we want to demonize. And as we take a look at, fascinating point on which to conclude this hour. And then we'll take everybody into the next hour. We've got plenty of room, plenty of time yet to go. In fact, with now an open line or two at 1-8-PRAGER-776, 1-8-PRAGER-776. I said that, no kid of mine is going to grab an AR-15 and walk into a riot. But I have an 18-year-old kid. And what we've talked about in this regard, because he said, "Dad, would you think it's fair to say that, that he's not guilty of a crime here? It was self-defense, but it was stupid for him to be there." I said, you can feel however you want about him being there. I tend to agree with you, but I don't want to ever suppress the instinct that some people have if they think, I'm going to see if I can be of help. I'm going to see if I can be of assistance. That at its first blood, and I want that instinct to be in you. You may think that 100 times. On half of them, you may think, but it might not be a great idea. But the boldness to want to do so is a good first step. Mark Davison for Dennis. Stick around.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
So why?
Testimony, Your Honor.
Pardon me?
That was before the
Don't
defense testimony.
get brazen with me. You knew very well. You know very well that an attorney can't go into these types of areas when the judge has already ruled without asking outside the presence of the jury to do so. So don't give me that. That's number one.
I have to tell you, I haven't sat in front of a lot of judges in real time. I did it once for a speeding ticket in my life. I have watched many trials on TV, real ones. I don't think I've ever seen a judge as pissed as that. He actually looked, if you weren't watching on the video, he looked infuriated. He was jumping up in his seat and he said, "Don't get brazen with me," to the deputy district attorney.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
Are you at all
thinking about some relief on any of your mandates?
Listen, there's mandate fatigue everywhere, including with yours truly, so let there be no doubt about that. At the moment, no.
This guy is a scumbag. He is awful. Contrast that with Governor DeSantis, America's greatest governor, most courageous, and just announced his re-election campaign to become governor of Florida again. A well-deserved campaign of a man who has been overly courageous with now the lowest COVID rates in the country. Can you get if it's COVID rate, death rates, or virus rates? It's whatever it is. It's the lowest in the country. Pursuing alternative treatments like monoclonal antibodies. The first major state to reopen. Phenomenal economic figures. No mask mandates for children. And in the school districts that are doing that, DeSantis is clamping down. He banned critical race theory, and DeSantis has done this in a logical and reasonable way. I'm inspired by his leadership versus the weak Vichy French Republicans across the country that continually pander to Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson. Ron DeSantis has been terrific. But Ron DeSantis understands the promise of the Constitution, unlike Murphy and most Republicans in the country, where Ron DeSantis says, a year and a half ago, we started with 15 days to slow the spread. Now it's get jabbed or lose your job. You see, what Ron DeSantis recognizes is that the sovereign is the people, not him. It's not we, the Ron DeSantis, or we, the governor of Florida. No, it's the people's rights that come first.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
I've just heard so much about this, and nobody seems to be taking it seriously.
This is the exact reason that in normal science, this is not normal science by any stretch of the imagination, we do benefit risk analysis. And obviously that is different for each person. But here we're not doing that. We're just saying everybody needs to do this. And we're completely neglecting natural immunity, which is extremely important. We've recognized it for decades and decades before now. Now they won't even want to talk about it or acknowledge it at all.
What do you reckon is behind that? I mean, this is a big thing. What can be behind something like that?
Well, I can't think of any scientific valid reason for doing it. There could be political reasons or other things going on, but I can't think of any scientific reason why you would ignore the evidence and the facts and just push a one-size-fits-all ideology.
We also know that many people have objections to these vaccines because all three of them, in one way or the other, involved aborted children. There's no getting around that. And so if somebody has an objection to that, how is it that the government can wipe away religious liberty and say, you've got to get this, if you want to keep your job, you've got to get this?
For the government to mandate away your religious liberty is a real issue. And even the federal court has recognized that and put a stay on the mandate.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Creeps who've had some financial success in life. We're the bad. We need to be punished. Although not Pelosi. Did you hear she pushed back on the capital gains tax increase? She didn't like that, and she's a wealthy woman. But anyway, it turns out the Nonpartisan Tax Policy Center has taken a look at Build Back Better. They're saying about 30% of middle-income households will be taxed and pay additional taxes, have a tax increase in 2022. Whoops! No, say it isn't so, Joe. Say it isn't so. Come on.
Come on, man.
Did you lie to us again? Did you not tell the truth? And some low and middle class and middle income households, according to the Nonpartisan Tax Policy Center, which has reviewed Build Back Better, they will pay more per year in taxes if the plan is implemented. You know, obviously they sat around the White House, they said, let's try this. Let's say that this massive spending won't cost anything. You know, it'll be a little bit like Biden calling Satchel Paige a Negro, and then we'll say he didn't call Satchel Paige a Negro. We'll see if they buy it. It doesn't cost a thing. It's free. Just like free college is really free. Wink, wink. Bunch of liars.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at Rumble.
That is a good rule of life to follow, depending on what's going on. The things I used to do, Lord, I ain't going to do them anymore. Lessons learned, quite the theme of life. Mark Davison for Dennis Prager. How's everybody? Third and final hour, and we are together, and I appreciate it. Dennis is back tomorrow. Always appreciate being here. I'm at 6:60 a.m. The Answer in Dallas-Fort Worth, where from 7 to 10 a.m. each morning, Central Time, I hold court and see what we want to talk about here in this community, and then I go grab a bagel and come upstairs and do the Prager Show. Not a bad gig, and I always enjoy it, and it's always great to be here with you and Sean and William and Leslie screening calls. So speaking of those calls, let's keep her busy, shall we? 1-8-PRAGER-776, 1-8-PRAGER-776. If you're just joining us, I guess we're in the fourth hour of Rittenhouse jury deliberation. I was just watching the great Andy McCarthy do some analysis on Fox, and it's funny because I think it was John Roberts who said, you know, Andy, it's never possible to predict how long a jury will take, but how long will a jury take? And are there signs that they're moving briskly? Are there signs that they're bogged down? And the answer to that wound up being that there can be when a jury keeps sending notes out. Like, what does reasonable doubt mean? Can we get an explanation on this precept of the law or this particular part of the judge's instructions? They sent this jury in with like big binders of stuff. Like anything you need, look in there. I guess it's to prevent a bunch of notes from going out and coming in and going out and coming in. So they apparently have what they need. And what they really need is what's in their heads. What they've needed were their eyes and ears to see the case laid out before them. The inept and darkly politically driven prosecution and the defense that blasted that prosecution to smithereens. Now, that's my eyes and my ears and my brain. Others may differ, but I've asked people, and I might as well ask you in this final hour, did you watch this trial and come away with any thought different than mine? Is there anything other than hatred of Kyle Rittenhouse or poisonous political bias that makes you think this kid was the aggressor? Because it's not my predilections, my politics, certainly not my race, which is irrelevant, that guides me to my thought about what this jury verdict ought to be. It has come from, keep the car on the road, it has come from watching the trial and consuming the evidence. What a concept. Alrighty, 1-8-PRAGER-776. Let us, I mentioned also, I might as well do this. Let me give you 2 minutes on this. We'll see how many plates we can keep spinning in the air. I mentioned I would say something about Steve Bannon, because he's such a lightning rod. People either just love them some Steve Bannon or they hate his guts or whatever. I think there's genius at work in Bannon. I think I prefer conservative messaging that doesn't quite bang around all over the place like a pinball machine. I loved every day of the Trump presidency. I was more than willing to endure the occasional mean tweet, the occasional, out-of-bounds observation in order to get the agenda that he delivered, in order to get the policies that he brought, the constitutionalist Supreme Court justices. the America First agenda, the strong borders, the lower taxes, the pro-business policies. Loved every single bit of it because, I'm a conservative. So my overall thought on Bannon is more positive than negative. But using the model of the Rittenhouse trial, my personal opinions about Steve Bannon don't matter, neither do yours, based on the subject at hand right now, which is what ought to happen when people straight up defy a congressional subpoena. Now, a congressional subpoena doesn't quite carry the teeth that a judicial one does. If you're subpoenaed to be in court, you better be in court or they'll come to your house. Congressional subpoenas basically say, hey, hi, we're Congress. We'd like for you to come testify. Sometimes people go, nah, I'm good. And they respectfully decline or disrespectfully decline. Does Congress then have does the FBI then have the authority to come arrest you for defying a congressional subpoena? Yes. How often do they do that? Virtually never. Hasn't happened in, I think, 40 years. Happened in the Steve Bannon case. Wonder why. So Steve Bannon shows up at the FBI, walks out yesterday and says, we're going on the offense. They picked on the wrong guy. This is going to be Biden and Nancy Pelosi's nightmare. Okay. So with that stage set, let's describe what is at issue here. It all begins with this January 6th committee, which is a malicious political dog and pony show. No matter what your January 6th thoughts are, my main January 6th thought is I'm sad about the lost opportunity. We had the opportunity, the millions of us who cast aspersion on a suspicious result, who wondered how it would have gone if we hadn't sacrificed all kinds of norms and laws and sacrificed them on the altar of phony COVID urgency. Gee, how might this election have gone in Michigan, Arizona, Pennsylvania? We'll never know. I will always doubt it. Does it mean that I magically have a number in my head that I somehow think the machines were being manipulated from Venezuela or other such things? No. But I will never believe that this election was clean and that this election was properly found. So, is there room in the world for my view? Yes, there is. And it would have been on display in honorable and passionate display on January 6th. Then a bunch of yahoos for whom that wasn't enough start breaching the Capitol and breaking stuff. Thanks, geniuses. You screwed it up for the rest of us. So now we got some of these people still rotting in jail. Are they being overpunished for daring to cast doubt on the pristine narrative of the Biden election? Yeah, probably. But in terms of what happened January 6th, my dog knows what happened January 6th. Some percentage of that crowd went nuts, couldn't restrain themselves, and broke the law, breaching the Capitol in some fit of frustration. The wheels of justice need to turn on these people. That's not okay. But this January 6th commission that has an encyclopedia of other questions they want to ask, what exactly do they want to ask? What don't they know? The wheels of investigation have turned. We know who all these folks are. They've all been charged. And now the wheels of justice need to turn efficiently, thank you, in all of their cases. The January 6th commission exists to penalize your election doubts and to demonize Donald Trump. That's why the January 6th commission exists. So since it is such a malicious joke, does it deserve to have its subpoenas ignored? There's a test for those of us for whom our conservatism is defined in part by an edict, by a philosophy that says, obey the rules. I'm a follow the rules kind of guy. And if there's a rule you don't like, follow it and explain why to whoever the authorities are enacting or enforcing that rule. So that would involve Bannon and Mark Meadows and others meeting the subpoena and showing up and saying whatever they wish to say. And if they were to do that, I'd be supportive. But you know what? I'm not going to blister them for saying no to these subpoenas. These subpoenas are an outrage. This committee is an outrage. It deserves to be ignored. So every once in a while, even those of us who are follow the rules guys will recognize It'll be a case-by-case thing, our own judgment's kicking in. Certain moments when some good, sweet civil disobedience is called for. And this strikes me as one of those times. So you go, Steve, and let's see how this goes. All right, let's see how your thoughts go. We're going to hit our first break here in about 60 seconds, so let me take that and reshuffle the deck. 1-8-Prager-776, 1-8-Prager-776. We've talked a lot about what verdict we expect, what happens if we get it, what happens if we don't get it. The National Guard troops, guess we got to see if they're on the move. We learned they were like in Waukesha County, an hour and a half away from Kenosha. What good are they there? And the logic came back, well, they could say that a verdict has been announced right now, and it would still take an hour and a half of paperwork before they actually announced it, enabling the tanks to roll down the streets of Kenosha right in time. No. They all need to be there right now, delivering the message right now. Zero tolerance for rioting. I hope they are not needed, but I'd rather have them and not need them than need them and not have them. Mark Davison for Dennis Prager. Be right back.
Streaming on Salem Now.
This is why we're fighting for the soul of America.
You should be able to share ideas without fear of being fired from your job or shouted down.
You are not to be heard. This is one of the few things we have no precedent for in the United States.
The only way we separate the good ideas from the bad ideas is to be free to say whatever we want about them.
There's no free speech for fascists.
Your posts on Facebook, Twitter, and social media will be saved to shame.
Creating an atmosphere of fear and repression, and it's gonna bust.
You cannot think differently.
It makes it difficult for you to learn from other people.
You have the right to remain silent.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
We'll see one young lady identify as transgender, and the next thing you know, 6 or 7 young ladies in that same school are now identifying as transgender.
Children taught at age 5 they can create their gender identity, and it's being celebrated.
Schools are lining up to push the transgender agenda on kids and cut parents out of the equation.
Every cell of their body that has a nucleus is male or female.
We've now seen parents losing custody of their children if they don't go along with this.
We've all been created XY or XX, so that means there's only 2 genders. And so really the battle is against the Creator.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
You called your son, and you personally promised him you would be here. Lucas, I don't know how to help you!
Your daddy loves you, you gotta know it, pal.
Prayer is a powerful thing, Ethan. It really does work. If you believe.
What reason does he have to care about some guy who's supposed to be his dad, but he's never around? I can't do it again. I'm not ready for this, man.
I'm done with you.
We all deserve a second chance. Right, Ethan?
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border.
Human trafficking.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
It is the Dennis Prager Show. Mark Davis filling in for Dennis. Hang on, just taking a look at Kenosha law enforcement. I believe they are weighing in with a statement here. A lot of people are asking the questions I am, like, hey, how many National Guard troops are we going to have on the streets? And Kenosha law enforcement statement. Our departments have worked together and made coordinated efforts over the last year to improve response capabilities to large-scale events. Okay. That said, hang on, I think what they're going to eventually pivot to is that said, they have not had the reason or have not, here we go, we've also strengthened our existing relationships with state and federal resources. At this time, we have no reason to facilitate road closures, enact curfews, or ask our communities to modify their daily routines. I think that's fair. If any business that wants to board up the windows, I hear you, I'm feeling you. And we need hundreds of National Guard troops poised at the ready with the goal of having rioting not even happen. If it does, and if we have broad skirmishes and all hell breaks loose, then they can start to talk about curfews, road closures, et cetera, et cetera. That seems to make sense. Okay, to the phones. 1-8-Prager-776. Mark Davis in for Dennis. We are in Columbus, Ohio. Hi, Paul. Mark Davis, nice to have you. How are you?
Well, I'm doing pretty good. Mark, I'm a defense attorney now. I was a prosecutor for years. I've handled a lot of homicides. And self-defense in Ohio, can't speak to Wisconsin. There is a provision that if you leave a fight and you go get a firearm and you come back to the fight and shoot somebody, you cannot take advantage of self-defense.
Okay. Isn't that in a very surgically specific case? Let's say it's you and me, God forbid, but let's say that you and I are in some horrible fight. It gets very elevated, and we're yelling at each other and threatening each other, and then I go get a gun and come back into your company. That's an obvious act. That's a big act of aggression of me. It gets like, doggone it, I'm going to show this guy, and then I could arguably become the aggressor. That's not what was right, but that's not what was happening in the Rittenhouse case at all. People are trying to apply that pretext that premise that you described to a guy who walks into an already existing riot with a weapon that he has brought with a protective goal, and then ultimately discharges that firearm when he is attacked in the middle of an already existing skirmish.
Well, right. And so the question would be, can you substitute for leaving the scene and coming back with a gun, which is our case law here, which says you can't take advantage of self-defense in that case. The fact that you would leave, let's say, a conflict with a certain person and go to a second person and then go back to that first person. But you're right. It depends on who's the primary aggressor and who makes the effort to reengage. The case that I had that came up, a guy was in his backyard. Two guys came up with baseball bats and were ready to attack him. He went and asked somebody for a gun, went back to them and shot them both.
Whoa.
And we decided that, yeah, exactly. He went and asked, although they were still on the scene with the baseball bats. But, of course, he had, he was not in his own home, so there was no castle doctrine. Did he
Right.
have the duty to retreat? Self-defense.
Oh gosh, what a rich and fertile arena of debate that is, the duty to retreat. Yes. That comes up so often. Let me ask a question in that case, or a similar one, because let's say you've got guys with baseball bats. Let's say they're threatening me, and I'm not having it. So I go see if I can get a firearm, and I show up. I don't just show up on the scene and shoot them. Like, here, you dirty sons of a whatever, and mow them down for having threatened me 30 minutes earlier. But I show up with a gun, making clear that I will not be trifled with any longer. And if they then, seeing me armed to the hilt, take action against me that threatens my life or physical well-being, then I blow them away. Is that different?
Well, a lot of it depends on geography.
God!
If you're in a public place,
I know, right? No, you're right.
If you're in
right.
your own backyard, if you're in your own backyard,
right?
Then I think it's different. The case I had, it was not this person's residence where it was happening in the backyard. Right. It was not his residence. He was simply a visitor there. And he actually went and asked a resident for a gun, went back and shot them.
Went and asked a resident for a gun. That's a good neighborhood. Yeah. Well, let me ask you, while I've got you. Really, I like neighborhoods where everybody has a gun. Yeah, people can come to me anytime. Let me ask you, in our remaining couple of minutes, let me just ask you, thank you so much for bringing the resume to the show here. How has it all struck you? You've been hearing everybody talking about it and watched it to some degree, I'm sure. How does this case strike you? How do you think it'll go? And just your thoughts.
Well, no, I agree with you. This is neutral territory. Nobody has the question is, do you have a duty to retreat? And in Ohio, I can't speak to Wisconsin law. If there were an opportunity, I do remember the one testimony where you're chased. Okay, if you try and leave from an altercation and somebody follows you, then you have activated, you have taken advantage of the duty to retreat, you have tried to retreat, and at that point, deadly force is going to be used, and it's going to be self-defense. So I didn't follow the trial. I apologize. I heard parts of it.
No, it's quite all right. It's quite all right. Do not enter the arena unprepared, sir. I'm teasing. Yeah, well, then last thing out of professional curiosity, sure. You said you've been a prosecution attorney and a defense attorney. Which did you enjoy more?
I've got to admit, I did enjoy being a prosecutor more. You have a lot of flexibility, and of course, you're the plaintiff in the case, so you're in charge of it. You're driving the boat, and so it is more fun. I enjoyed it much more, but circumstances changed, including finances, and I decided to switch. I thought I'd have a terrible time being a defense attorney, but it turned out well also.
I'm glad.
Things worked out.
I'm very glad. All right, last thing. I keep saying last question, and I'm lying, because I'm curious, and I appreciate you so much. What about the notion that, as a prosecutor, you're in front of judges all the time? You guys might be actually friendly with each other, which leads people to think of judges as prosecutors in robes. Fair or unfair?
Well, you've got to admit, and part of it is based on the idea that a ruling against the prosecution almost never can be appealed. So there is whereas the defense, of course, can take advantage of all the mistakes. So to a certain degree, and the fact is that most judges, I would say most judges, are former prosecutors. And so they've been there, and of course, like you say, there's camaraderie. They've worked with these people probably next to them on cases before they became a judge. And so there's the camaraderie there, plus, the state is the people. Right?
That's right. I always hated that phraseology, the people versus Joe Blow. It's like, who's against the people? How fair is that? Paul, thank you. I got to scoot. I appreciate you so very, very much. Mark Davison for Dennis Prager. All righty. Got a home stretch half hour. What will we make of it? A lot of that is your heavy lifting. Join us at 1-8-PRAGER-776. Be right back.
trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Then we are going to bring in innovative charter schools. Most people don't know that public charter schools are public schools, and so they fight against it. They worship the building instead of the child, and we're not going to just keep throwing money at that. In fact, I put in a charter school bill 20 years ago when I was first in office, but we were stopped.
Now, let's pause there for a moment, Lieutenant Governor-elect Sears. The appointments of the Secretary of Education and the Superintendent of Education are, I think, the two most important that Governor Youngkin, when he becomes Governor Youngkin, makes. Have you counseled with him on who those individuals ought to be and what their orientation ought to be towards charter schools?
Well, Governor-elect Youngkin, oh boy, do I love saying that. Governor-elect Youngkin has promised us he's going to fire the current superintendent. Day one, fire this current superintendent. Now, I believe he's going to have at least 2 appointments almost immediately on the board because, they roll off.
Yes.
But the board has been stacked now for the past, but we can't really get rid of the policies that we have unless we get rid of some of the laws that we have, you see, because what they're doing is implementing the laws, which is why we needed the House, because we've got to bring back some of that and get rid of it, for example, CRT. And, unfortunately, this left-wing media has been gaslighting us to let us know that, well, there is no such thing as CRT, when we have seen with our own eyes that back in 2015, the Virginia State Board of Education put it on their website and put books recommending the reading of such and the teaching of such.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
What, is he charged with first-degree murder?
That's right, 2 counts.
How is that possible? It's an altercation. I mean, first-degree murder is where you're like, I'm going to murder this person and go to their home with, not some sort of bar fight gone wrong.
Yeah, so you're right, actually. That would be, what you're talking about would potentially be either voluntary manslaughter.
Yeah, that's what I never understood about this.
Or second-degree murder because it was more indiscriminate. What they're saying is, what the prosecution's argument is that Kyle Rittenhouse brought his gun because he intended to murder these BLM protesters and that he had a vengeful intent. Now, what's interesting to me is that the prosecution just a few minutes ago before I came on the show just rested in this case after about a week and a half of testimony. They did not present a single shred of evidence that Kyle Rittenhouse showed up with intent to hurt anyone.
Well, but this is what I can't understand, is that the judge, the pretrial, arguments, because this is just, you have months to submit, motions to dismiss. You're trying to tell me no one looked at this? They say, wait a second. You're charging a guy who got in an altercation was, by the way, the guy that Kyle Rittenhouse killed in self-defense was like a child rapist or something, right? He was like a child pedophile or something. Is that right?
Multiple count child rapist. And honestly,
I'm not saying he deserves to die because of it, but
right.
Let's
the
just
details of that case, if anyone wants to see it, it's absolutely horrific.
This is not Gandhi, okay? Let's just.
But what's interesting, what's actually relevant to this is that he had just been released from a hospital where he was being held on a psychiatric hold.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Strutting with confidence down Talk Show Boulevard. Mark Davis filling in for Dennis. How you doing? The Saturday Night Fever imagery. You have to be a certain age. Alrighty. Hey, speaking of Dennis, he and Charlie Kirk, right, and Larry Elder are in Phoenix in the proud area of AM 960, The Patriot, doing an event this very evening. And so that's where these guys are. So I'm glad to be here in Dennis's stead for just one day while he gets himself ready to ignite and delight a crowd full of happy listeners. Hope these listeners are happy. I'm always happy to be here. Let's see how happy or unhappy people are on the phone about whatever. 1-8-Prager-776, 1-8-Prager-776. Glad you are here. We're in Colorado Springs. Douglas. Hey, Mark Davis and for Dennis. How are you? Happy Tuesday.
Hey, good to hear you. I love listening to your voice because every time I listen to you, I'm reminded of Bosley from the old Charlie's Angels TV series.
Oh, my gosh. Wow. I don't know if that comparison's ever been made to me. I will take it. That's lovely. Good morning, Angels.
David Doyle.
That's right. That's right. Thank you. That's awesome. I will take that. I'll take that to the bank. Oh, gracious. All right, what else is going on with you?
I love listening to you when you sub.
Well, thank you. If that was your only goal, you've made my day, and I appreciate it very, very much. David Doyle, but good morning, Angel. No, that was Charlie. No, that's right. Okay, gotcha. I guess I'm not as big a Charlie's Angels devotee as I should be. All righty, to the phones in Fort Worth. Roger, Mark Davis in for Dennis. How you doing?
Well, I was just laughing about this. They call it the National Guard.
Yes.
Dum-da-dum-dum. But they don't give the National Guard troops any bullets.
Well, people asked earlier.
They haven't
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Kent State.
Yeah, that May 4th, 1970 will have a chilling effect on that to a degree. I don't think that paints a bad paints a bad intent on everything. The National Guard, sometimes, guess what? Sometimes they need bullets. And I hope to God they don't need them in Kenosha. I mean, that's now it is possible to dispel riots with, as we talked about, I think in the last hour, rubber bullets, tear gas, 50 guys walking down a street. It's possible to, and by the way, I'm not looking to instantly go, full deadly force when riots break out. Deadly rioting can sometimes deserve a deadly response from law enforcement, and that's last resort and worst case scenario. I guess in order of my preference, it would be there is enough law enforcement on the ground in Kenosha that rioting doesn't even happen. Okay. Next level would be if people do decide to make trouble, that the mobilization of this law enforcement quickly and effectively disperses the protesters with a minimum of injury. Ideally, none. Everybody just goes, "Ooh, wow, this is not a good idea. I'm going home." If that doesn't happen, you got to do what you got to do. And so again, rather than dwell in violent projections forward about what might happen if there is an acquittal and the streets just don't like it and they explode with rage, let's pray for that not to happen. Let us fervently and sincerely ask God for his calming power and ask everyone involved. Kenosha officials are already doing this, and good for them, no matter how this turns out. And there's already been a couple of mouthy exchanges outside the courthouse. See, folks, some folks are just going to show up and they're just going to get mouthy. Mouthy's okay. I do mouthy for a living. I monetize mouthy. But in all seriousness, if people want to show up and be vocal about it, that's fine. But the moment at which violent intent kicks in, that can't be tolerated. We can't have that. And I can't believe that I have to say this in modern America, but I do. We've had to say it all the way back since the LA riots following the Rodney King verdicts. Riots don't become okay if you agree with the people who are rioting. Rioting is always wrong. Taking to the streets violently is not an option that exists in a civilized society. So let's see if maybe that logic can exist going forward, and let us do the following. Let us provide for you the phone number, 1-8-Prager-776, and we'll hop back on the phones with you next as we approach the home stretch. Mark Davis in for Dennis. Stick around.
the Pilgrims. They were poor. They were outcasts. They were enemies of the state for their refusal to submit to the Church of England.
The Mayflower was a cargo ship, but the most precious cargo that was carried across the Atlantic were the ideas in the hearts of the Pilgrims that were drawn from the Bible.
Not only did they start self-rule, they started free trade, capitalism, land ownership, all in 10 years with 51 people.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
You called your son, and you personally promised him you would be here. Lucas, I don't know how to help you!
Your daddy loves you, you gotta know it, pal.
Prayer is a powerful thing, Ethan. It really does work, if you believe.
What reason does he have to care about some guy who's supposed to be his dad, but he's never around? I can't do it. I can't. I'm not ready for this, man.
I'm done with you.
We all deserve a second chance. Right, Ethan?
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
Obama tore this country down. No one stood up to him. Nobody. Because he was black. You need to wake up.
Jewish house nigga. I didn't call you a nigga.
Oh, okay. That's a big difference.
You're Uncle Tom.
And Uncle Tom is somebody who has sold out by embracing the white man.
Uncle Tom,
Bedwench,
bootlicker,
black white supremacist,
chucking and jiving,
house Negro,
coon,
Uncle Tom,
coon.
I have a coon award over there. Most black people don't believe that other blacks can be independent, free thinkers.
I believe the legacy and the ancestry of black Americans is being insulted every single day. I will not pretend to be a victim in this country. I know that that makes many people on the left uncomfortable.
The liberal will try to control a black person through the concept of racism because they know that we are very proud, emotional people.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
History-making tax and spend disaster. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. And this is why people were so angry at the Republicans in the Senate and the House who have supported Biden's scheme. Did you hear Trump was given a speech Monday night? The Republican Congressional Committee had a dinner, and he blasted the 13 Republicans in the House. I think Nicole Maliotakis was in the room. She had to be squirming. Because I'm sure President Trump held back, as he does. I'm sure he was very genteel and, very discreet.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at Rumble.
That's us. And I just get to hang out today while Dennis does an event in the greatness of Phoenix. Appreciate you all for hanging out with me. And the phone number is 1-8-PRAGER-776, 1-8-PRAGER-776. Let's see what we'll do here in the final quarter hour of the program. I have some broad, culminating comments that I hope to plug in at some point to tie a massive bow around everything that's going on and stuff that we have talked about today. I'm greatly appreciative of your input, and we got room for a few more of you if you want to grab an open line at 1-8-PRAGER-776. Right now, we are in Algonquin, Illinois, and Brian, that is you. Welcome. Mark Davison for Dennis. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Great job.
Thank you.
I just my comment was basically in regard to Mr. Binger, and his comments were in regard the way he was kept going on and on about the 4 shots and how Kyle should have stopped after the first shot, and he should have known that he had, I forget the person's name, but the man was incapacitated after the first shot because it blew apart his pelvis. But my thought pattern was that, how in the world was he supposed to know that the guy had blown apart his pelvis? Because anybody who's taken self-defense classes, first of all, you're taught to shoot center mass anyway. So if you go through those classes, and I don't know if I'm sure you probably may have gone through self-defense as well with a gun, but they teach you to shoot center mass anyway, which is right where your heart is. Yes. So obviously, if he shot him in the leg, that would be a better thing than shooting him in center mass because he would have died instantly. Second of all, Full Metal Jacket bullets are not what he kept making them out to be. Those are mainly for what you use for target practice, which is what I thought was really goofy. Whenever he kept making it out like they were some sort of a target round to deliberately try to shoot somebody on the other side of another person, your main target. So those were mainly my comments.
I appreciate them because the prosecution was so desperate to try to cobble something together that they needed to kind of invent gun laws that didn't exist, invent motivations that didn't exist, mock anybody who would be motivated to do anything, and then change the timing of the video, slow it down so that it just looks like, you could go out for a pack of smokes and come back and figure out what you might do while under attack, when in reality, things like this happen bam, 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 with lightning fast speed in real time, leaving people to perceive that they're under attack and reasonably react in kind without the luxury of the passage of that kind of time. So I appreciate it, sir. Thank you very, very much. This and every single bit of this is precisely what the jury is going to have to concern itself with. And to reiterate something I mentioned in hour number 1, to be a fly on the wall. I have not, do I want to be on a jury or not? I keep thinking I do. Everybody I know who's ever been on one, 80% of them hated it. I don't know, maybe it was a boring case or whatever. It just wasn't worth the time off. I think because I've talked about so many cases in a nearly 40-year talk show career that, and I've talked about juries, spoken to countless people who have served on them, evaluated the strengths and weaknesses of our jury system. Where does this quote come from? That America has the worst justice system in the world, except for everybody else's. Get it? In other words, ours is just filled with flaws. It's a human system. It's messy. But ain't nobody else got one better. So here we are. Human beings, 12 human beings with all of their flaws, all of their imperfections, all of their biases, which they have a job to put a pin in and suppress and ignore. It's kind of counterintuitive. Everything that we come to the table with, everything we're asked about, we see through the lens of our experience. The jury kind of, duty on a jury asks you to kind of be clinical about it and look only at the evidence, only at the facts, and only at the law. It takes a certain discipline to do that. And I hope this jury is disciplined. I hope so. We are in Kingston, Pennsylvania. And Richie, hey, Mark Davis in for Dennis. How are you? Good Tuesday. Welcome.
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for taking my call, Mark.
Hi, my pleasure.
I just want to, my opinion on the Rittenhouse case. If there's anyone to really blame here, you got to blame the parents. I mean, come on. The kid was, how old was he? 17 years old, and you're gonna let your kid, I say 17,
I know,
to go with that AK, whatever it was, to go to a different state in a protest. God forbid, who knows what could happen. And this is what happens, And me personally, I blame the parents. And now what's happening is this kid now, he's on trial for murder, and this should have never happened.
Well, there's no doubt that there's no trial if he doesn't go, but he did, and I think everybody's entitled to wonder if that was the smartest thing in the world, or whether your kid would have done it, or whether you would have done it if you were 17. There have been a lot of people who have condemned him for going, and I'm not going to do that. It's probably not my favorite thing, but I'll tell you, to take a step sideways from the surgical observation about Kyle, it is one of my favorite things when people see a void and say, count me in. When people, maybe they need to be older, maybe they need to have better gun training, maybe they need to have purer motive. I mean, purer. I mean, Kyle's was not a criminal motive or whatever, but I sense a kid who had junior G-man syndrome. But that doesn't make him a bad kid. It doesn't make a kid of bad intent. But I don't ever want to suppress or quash or discourage an instinct on the part of anybody to say, when they see a vacancy in society, a void where the police aren't there, good people aren't there, something bad is happening to someone on a train in Philadelphia like we saw in October, to step in and say, you know what, I'm not going to let that happen here. I'm not going to let that happen to my community. I'm not going to let that happen. I think that's a praiseworthy thing when people feel that way. Mark Davison for Dennis. Back for a final segment next.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Creeps who've had some financial success in life. We're the bad. We need to be punished. Although not Pelosi. Did you hear she pushed back on the capital gains tax increase? She didn't like that, and she's a wealthy woman. But anyway, it turns out the Nonpartisan Tax Policy Center has taken a look at Build Back Better. They're saying about 30% of middle-income households will be taxed and pay additional taxes, have a tax increase in 2022. Whoops! No, say it isn't so, Joe. Say it isn't so. Come on.
Come on, man.
Did you lie to us again? Did you not tell the truth? And some low and middle class and middle income households, according to the Nonpartisan Tax Policy Center, which has reviewed Build Back Better, they will pay more per year in taxes if the plan is implemented. You know, obviously they sat around the White House, they said, let's try this. Let's say that this massive spending won't cost anything. You know, it'll be a little bit like Biden calling Satchel Paige a Negro, and then we'll say he didn't call Satchel Paige a Negro. We'll see if they buy it. It doesn't cost a thing. It's free. Just like free college is really free. Wink, wink. Bunch of liars.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. Sometimes there are policies so destructive that at first you don't believe they're true. Joe Biden is currently defending one, his plan to award $450,000 to migrants separated from their families after entering the U.S. illegally. Children of deceased U.S. soldiers are separated from their parents permanently. They don't receive this kind of money. And migrants who enter the U.S. legally certainly don't get this kind of payout. The really big jackpot, it seems, is being reserved for the lawbreakers. There are some obvious truths here. First, behavior that's subsidized gets repeated. Joe Biden is effectively inviting many more illegal immigrants to breach America's open borders. Second, he's betting over time the payoffs will benefit his party in political terms. Meanwhile, the vast majority of Americans watch in shock and dismay as our president, the country's chief law enforcement officer, brazenly rewards lawbreaking, a clear violation of his oath to defend our nation's laws. It's a sorry sight indeed.
It is the closing moments of the Tuesday, November 16th Dennis Prager Show. Mark Davis filling in from 660 a.m. The Answer, Dallas-Fort Worth. It has been a joy. So I'll tell you what, rather than have me, wax with additional attempted eloquence in whatever way, let's see if we can go to what we might call the last segment lightning round, where if you can be really quick, we can put you on and see what you want to say and get out of Dodge together, shall we? We're in Cleveland Heights, Ohio. Gary, Mark Davis in for Dennis. Hi, go.
Yes, sir. You mentioned, I believe you said something about the Rittenhouse case being something like a movie, and my comment was, there is a movie. It's a real-life movie. It's called 12 Angry Men. It's an old movie. Henry Fonda's in it. And if you can't do more, watch it. I want you to know that I practiced law for a good number of years, and when the jury goes behind the doors, nobody knows what's going on. Nowadays, people talk a little bit more out of school than they should, but sometimes the results are astonishing.
Well put. Good word selection. Yeah, in fact, let me scoot, because that way I can fit another couple of people on. We're in Philadelphia. Michael, Mark Davis in for Dennis. How are you doing? Go.
Thank you, Mark. You answered, Mark. You said it. The police weren't there, and I love the police. When I see a police officer, I always go up and thank them for serving, including military people.
That's it.
Right, but isn't there any culpability? I don't know who the mayor of Kenosha is, but I'm lost why no one was there to show up and stop this from even happening.
Yeah, well, boy, whether it's Kenosha, whether it's Atlanta, whether it's Dallas, where we had cops ambushed after a Black Lives Matter protest, you've asked exactly the right question for our age. One is, in all fairness, I mean, when a riot breaks out, the cops can't be everywhere, but sometimes it seems like they're not anywhere. And is that bad police planning? Is it a stand down order? Is it, who knows what it might be? But all the public wants, all we want is, if there are troublemakers, and there are always going to be, individual or collective or groups, that we want a police force that has not been savaged and berated and defunded to be able to respond lawfully and effectively. I hope that's not asking too much. The only thing I ask you is your indulgence for appreciate you hanging out with me. Dennis is back tomorrow. He'll have stories of his evening in Phoenix. Thank you to Sean and to William and to Leslie for screening the calls. And thanks, as always, to all of you. Follow me on Twitter at Mark Davis. If you want me in book form, grab a copy of Upside Down, How the Left Turned Right into Wrong, Truth into Lies, and Good into Bad. That's a lot of subtitle. So just do Mark Davis Upside Down on Amazon or wherever fine books are sold. I'll see you next time they ask. In the meantime, hang out with me on Twitter, and I'll see you on 660 a.m. The Answer in Dallas-Fort Worth. Have a great rest of your day. God bless this jury. Give them courage and clarity. We'll see what happens, and peace on the streets of Kenosha. Be good.